The topic is telemedicine models for supporting psychedelic therapy. It's going to be a great one. Our moderator is the wonderful human, Lauren Taus, who is a licensed psychedelic therapist and educator. And we are joined by Juan Pablo Cappello, who is the co-founder and a payotist for New Life Health Public Benefit Corp., and Jonathan Sabbagh, who is the co-founder and CEO of Journey Clinical. It's been a great one. Thank you so much. Please welcome our speakers.
How's everybody doing? It's Friday morning, afternoon. It's a lot going on. I'm so grateful to be here to talk about telemedicine with these two potent pioneers. And I am, as just introduced, Lauren Taus. I'm a psychedelic assisted therapist. I do a lot of telemedicine. And when I was actually asked to moderate this panel, I was like, well, I'm glad someone on the stage knows about telemedicine. and you know, this movement is absolutely an all hands on deck movement. Like, we need everybody to participate in the reconstitution and restoration of human ecology. And we have amazing business people here today who are widening the work, and we're going to talk about that. I want to start by just sharing a few facts, and then invite these beautiful men to tell you a little bit more about themselves. So telemedicine was trending before COVID started, but post-pandemic, we now know that telehealth is absolutely here to stay. The use of virtual care is 38 times higher than before the pandemic, 38 times higher. Overall, the observed rapid growth in telehealth services for mental health care went from 39.4% in 2019 to 88.1% in 2022. A survey by the American Medical Association found that 83% of patients who had a telehealth visit were satisfied with the experience. Before the pandemic, telehealth was a modality that was most common in rural areas. However, throughout the pandemic, telehealth availability increased more rapidly in urban areas. So I'm based in Los Angeles, and literally right after this panel, I have to jet to have a client session. I also have my family here. My brother has a telehealth group this afternoon. There's so much good work that's happening through telemedicine. And the ways in which that is happening matter, because it's, of course, like all things, a nuanced conversation. And I'm excited to be in that with Jonathan and Pablo today. So guys, can you introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit about your respective companies?
Of course. So I'm Jonathan. I am the co-founder and CEO of Journey Clinical. And you know, at Journey, what our mission is to expand access to psychedelic therapies. And we do that by empowering licensed mental health professionals to incorporate these treatments as an adjunctive therapy in their practice. And you know, what we have built essentially is the necessary infrastructure for psychedelic assisted psychotherapy to happen. We're doing that by taking on all the medical part of psychedelic therapy, starting with ketamine, while our member psychotherapists take on the therapy portion. And I built this business with my amazing co-founder and wife during COVID in our apartment. And it came for me from an experience where, you know, I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And for a large part of my adult life, I actually had depression, anxiety, substance abuse disorders, until, you know, about 8 years ago, a friend of mine took me to try ayahuasca and then ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. And that was very helpful, very transformative. It changed my life, really. I actually ended up quitting finance, and I went back to school to study clinical psychology in New York. And so today I'm really proud to say that, you know, we opened up our membership in February of last year, and we now have 900 licensed mental health professionals in our network. We've seen more than 2,500 patients during that time, and that network of 900 people have delivered more than 5,000 CAP sessions. And we've recorded that 93% of our patients have shown improvements in their outcomes. So that's pretty amazing to have done that.
Great, I'm Juan Pablo Cappello. I'm originally from Chile. I grew up in the traditions of Latin America with San Pedro since I was about 7 because of being separated from my mother because of the drug war and politics. in Chile. And I had always experienced my spirituality and personal growth in front of the fire with those traditions. Coming out of COVID, my mother asked me what I was going to do. And without thinking about it, I said, I want to help 1 million people address the root cause of their suffering, depression, and anxiety. And she asked me, what kind of people? And I knew what she was asking was, hey, is this just going to be another project for affluent people? And I said, no, I want to help. From day one, I want to be able to help school teachers, first responders, and veterans, sort of people on Main Street. And hopefully over time, really help the urban poor and people recently released from prison. I just had an uncle who spent 10 years in prison because of cannabis. And so as I began to lean into how you unpack that and how you do that, I realized we needed to work with ketamine because that's the tool that we had available. I'd actually never done any sort of synthetic mind-altering drug until I was 55. And so I had to get over my prejudice against synthetics and ketamine. And similarly, I didn't really trust or sort of believe in telehealth, digital therapeutics and things, and realized to have the kind of impact we wanted to have, we needed to leverage technology. And I'm proud to say today, in the last 2 years, we've helped 10,000 patients. We have an at-home model. We operate in 26 states. We've delivered over 100,000 ketamine experiences with our 30-plus person medical team. 100,000 experiences. We've tracked all the data. No serious negative outcomes. And what I'm proudest of, and I always focus on the hardest patients to treat, because in my view is we're not succeeding if we're just, sort of helping the easiest patients. So the hardest patients to treat are treatment-resistant patients. So about 40% of our patients come to us having tried 3 antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds and haven't been able to find relief, or the side effects are just too terrible. And we're able to help 2/3 of those patients for $1,300 no longer be clinically depressed or anxious, at least in the short term. And we've published that data. And so, yeah, we're a public benefits corporation, really just focused on that mission.
I always love an applause. So nice. And again, there's individual providers, right? I provide work, and there's only so much that I can do. And so when infrastructures are developed to support the widening of this work to reach more people, it's really very exciting. I work in a specific way. I have a training program as well for psychedelic assisted therapy and integration. Next one's in October. Clinicians, if you're in the room, take a look. But I'd like to get a little bit deeper into your respective models. How are you doing this work, and what are you focusing on in the delivery of ketamine-assisted psychotherapy?
Yeah. So at Journey Clinical, what we do is operate within the context of a collaborative care model. And for us, it's very important because we feel that it's in relation with humans and other humans that a container for long-term behavioral change can be operated in the context of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. And so the way it works is that licensed mental health professionals become a member of Journey Clinical. We have a whole education platform for them, so they go through training. They work with you, Lauren, who delivers some training for them as well. They have experiential trainings where they can experience CAP. They have peer consultation groups. We help them with legal resources. We help them assess what a good referral is. And then they'll refer their patients through our HIPAA-compliant CAP portal to our in-house medical team. And that patient will have a full hour intake with our medical providers. We'll check for eligibility. If there are clearances that need to be made, we'll do that. And then we'll send them enough ketamine for 2 sessions. And those 2 sessions will be delivered by the licensed mental health professional. And what's really interesting here for us is that we provide a lot of flexibility thanks to telehealth. And so those sessions can be in person, they can be at home, they can be in group formats and retreat formats. And so we provide the flexibility to the therapist and the patient to choose together what is the best modality. And then they'll come back for dose adjustments and we'll see them regularly. But the other part of what we're doing, and I think really that's probably the most important thing, is that we are a collaborative care model. And so what we're doing essentially is partnering with the licensed mental health professionals to deliver bespoke treatment plans at scale. So we're here to understand from the person who's got the most insights on the patient's mental health, because you're seeing them every week, what the best course of treatment is, and we adapt it to whatever makes sense. We're also here when there's a vigilance event, when there's a problem, to be on call. We're on call 24/7 for the therapist and the patient to have someone to know what to do and to guide through those experiences as need be. So, basically it's like having a huge hospital system at your disposal. All that is combined with a giant community of therapists. There's 900 people, so there's a lot of peer-to-peer dynamics. They meet up, they do amazing things. We have some therapists here that do sound ceremonies for others, like a lot of them fantastic offerings. And it's really important because it's lonely work, right? And so operating in community with other people who know how to do this is essential to taking care of the providers, because we believe that by caring for the providers, we're going to increase the standard of care.
I am a proud advisor I'm a proud advisor for Journey Clinical, and Jonathan has become a very dear friend, like a brother, and we bicker sometimes, and I really appreciate the collaborative care model and the focus on the clinical work and ensuring that the providers themselves have what they need to deliver good services to their clients. And I just want to kind of name that for me as a therapist, psychedelic assisted therapy needs the therapy piece. And so that feels like a really important part of the telemedicine conversation too, right? Because while you're empowering the providers to work with telemedicine, like what you're really doing is getting the prescription that way and ensuring that people have, we'll get deeper into all that. But the individual clinicians can do what they do in the ways in which they do it in a community. So thank you.
Thank you for being part of it.
Tell me about New Life.
So I really want to acknowledge, I think it's great what Journey Clinical is doing in terms of this collaborative care model. We've embraced that model as well. We're at home. A patient can come to our website and deal directly with our large medical team. And as I said, we've helped about 10,000 patients to date through that journey. 6 ketamine experiences. We also only ship initially 2 ketamine experiences to the patient's house. We verify they have a sitter. We'll talk about how we leverage technology to elevate the standard of care. My issue when we started was I didn't want to cheapen, just lower cost and also lower the standard of care. The question and really the experiment that we were trying to solve, I think it's successfully solved, is how do we leverage technology to lower costs but actually elevate the standard of care? And that's not just leveraging telehealth for the initial medical consult, but it's leveraging technology to get information off the patient's wearables, to allow the patient to have a companion throughout their whole healing experience, and also to give clinicians access to all that data. So we can literally not only help a clinician and a patient know exactly what happened during the experience in terms of their heart rate, blood pressure, whatever information they can get off their wearables, curate their playlist, capture all of their voice notes and any journaling that they do, as well as capture any group of therapy sessions and integration sessions that they're doing after the experience, and then going forward, really track how patients are sleeping, how patients are exercising, how much patients are on their phone, because those are obviously very correlated to how patients are doing. And so we offer all of this to our patients, and going to this collaborative care idea, after spending about $5 million building that tech platform, which was extremely unique in helping 10,000 plus patients. Last week before this conference, we decided to give that away. And so our gift to clinicians and this whole movement is any patient doing ketamine therapy today, whether it's IM or IV or at home, with our clinicians or any clinicians, is going to have access, has access today to our digital platform or digital companion for free. Because the reality is, for me, that's the ultimate collaborative care model, where you can sort of come as you are, and if the patient chooses, they can give all of that copious amounts of data to their clinicians. So it's really a unique approach. It's helpful when you're a public benefits corporation, where you're really focused on merging mission and margin, and that's a short-term step that's really mission focused and not margin focused, not about profitability. We believe in the long run, that's the approach that ultimately wins, and that's been our journey the last year.
Beautiful. So I'm hearing that it's a lot of at-home work with sitters. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, so it just depends. We're a platform that's really agnostic. So if a patient wants to work with our clinicians directly, we have an at-home model. Because of our technologies, I think unlike anyone else's, for instance, we verify that the person has the physical sitter in the room using not only because they have to upload a photo in real time through our app of the person who's actually going to accompany them during the experience, but also we're using geolocation through Bluetooth, etc., to make sure that the sitter and the patient are in the same room, etc. But again, that's if they're going through the protocol with our clinicians. If they're going through, if it was one of your patients, our app can support whether you're doing in person with the patient or you're helping them remotely. So that really what we thought, and this is, again, we didn't start this company with any goal other than to help 1 million people. The tools that we're using, et cetera, were just developed to help us get closer to that goal. And so we've created this platform, again, it's new.life, NUE.life, and any of you can use it. We've created this to basically allow clinicians and patients to come as they are, and our technology is going to give them information and capture information that they wouldn't otherwise be able to capture on their own.
Beautiful. How has telemedicine impacted mental health care generally?
I think it's a very important question. And telehealth is here to stay. The genie's out of the bottle. And so, as you said, that amazing number, right? 40% of people in 2019 and 90% of people in 2022. It's probably more now. So, after COVID, what we really saw is that millions of people got access to potentially life-saving treatments, right? And it ranges from addiction treatments to mental health treatments. And so, what telehealth has enabled and what it's enabling right now is increased accessibility, lowering the price of treatments, but it's also a tool. And I think it's comparable to when you look at the advent of the internet or AI, the combination of technology and humans to increase the standard of care and the accessibility of treatment is what's going on. So at Journey Clinical, we work in relation to a therapist. We're a tech platform, everything is tech enabled, but that is to enable the therapist to deliver the treatment in the modality that works best. So we see some of our members during COVID built an entirely telehealth practice. And that works amazing. We've got people delivering group cap in telehealth. It sounds crazy, but it actually works very well. You've done it actually for us. And then we have patient members or therapists who are delivering a hybrid models where they start in person and they go to at home. And so I think it's a tool that unlocks tremendous amounts of possibility, accessibility, and better pricing for patients at a high standard of care if used cautiously.
I think the caution part is really important. I'm aware of how explosive these tools are, and when these experiences aren't really cared for, they can be quite harmful. And I've also worked with that a lot, and so analog. I'm a therapist. I work small, you know, and with the prayer that like small will be big. And I just appreciate the caution. As well, you know, I worked in person throughout the entire pandemic, but many people were not comfortable with that. And so I worked digitally, and I delivered many ketamine sessions through Zoom. And, you know, to be honest, it's a little weird. And it works, right? It does work. I'm always gonna prefer in person where I can like see you and breathe with you and feel with you. As we, you know, talk about the intersection of really technology, telemedicine, and psychoactive substances, do you have any concerns? What are you most excited about? What do you feel?
I mean, I think that concerns exist like any tool. They need to be used responsibly. So, you know, I think platforms really need to rely on proper eligibility. We really believe that partnering with the licensed mental health professionals elevates the standard of care, makes sure that the patient is receiving multiple layers of fallback if something goes wrong. And, you know, to us, that's been very clear. Like, we've never had a patient that had a vigilance event that we'd have to stop working with. In fact, we're able to collaborate with a therapist, understand what was going on, and get those patients to do better. And they're still patients with us. So that's really quite amazing. Of course, you know, there's concern. Anything can be abused. And I think acknowledging that and behaving responsibly as stewards of these technologies is essential.
Yeah, I want to just jump in there because, so my mother would always point out that the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of the questions you're willing to ask yourself. So if you ask yourself better, deeper questions, you're going to have a better, deeper, more meaningful life.
Sounds like a good mom.
Yeah, no, my mom, she took a lot of medicine.
I love her.
She was definitely on the path. So, you know, there's sort of this assumption, you know, that inpatient is necessarily better than sort of telehealth. And I think that's because many people, when they hear telehealth, what they imagine is, you know, the medical consult that you have with the doctor, you know, making eye contact and, you know, getting a prescription and getting a diagnosis or getting a plan of treatment. And that's sort of the first step. That's not what we at New Life consider telehealth. What we really consider telehealth is digital therapeutics. And, you know, what do I mean by that? Think about it. You go visit your doctor, you have your ketamine experience, inpatient, it's great, totally connected. The patient leaves the office and, you know, gets hit by a bus the next day, has a serious, you know, mental break the next day. And the reality is, for 98% of clinicians, unless the patient reaches out, they're just not going to know. And maybe they're going to find out a week later, a month later, when the patient's in a state of crisis, rather than, you know, the next day or the next hour. And so by offering a digital companion, where the patient is in direct contact with their clinician, and the clinician at any point can see, you know, how's the patient doing? How's the patient self-reporting? How much did the patient sleep last night? Is the patient exercising? Is the patient, you know, on their phone? Are there all these sorts of tells? We think you actually deliver a higher standard of care, and more importantly, you're in that constant contact and flow with your patients, but in a much more efficient way. So that's, you know, one thing. The other thing is, you know, the reality is, even to give you all an idea, inpatient ketamine therapy varies between $500 and $1,000 per treatment. At home might vary between $150 to $300 per treatment. In our case, that includes integration and aftercare. So you have this huge cost savings. The reality is, ketamine is very cheap. Ketamine might be $10, $20. And there's a lot of people who can't afford to go through the classic clinical model and, you know, even pay a couple $100 per treatment. And so by offering the kind of platform that we offer that's open, you know, we of course encourage anyone who's using our app to be working with a licensed clinician. And that's really what we want, and we think, you know, that should be the minimum standard of care. But the reality is not everyone, and certainly not the most vulnerable people in society, are going to be able to access the traditional medical self-pay system, even at the much lower cost that Journey Clinical and New Life and a few other ethical providers offer. And so, we felt in order to have this impact, the question is, and the tougher question to answer is, hey, what do we do about the most vulnerable people? And that's where we decided to offer a platform that we think can elevate your clinical practice, but can also offer an extraordinary standard of care for an individual who's going at it alone because he or she can't afford the cost of traditional therapy. Yeah.
Thank you. And as a clinician too, I'm just in the prayer for much less therapy and for kind of putting the system on medicine so that we're all doing much better collectively and can really be with one another in ways that you don't need to hire an outside intervention at all. And until we're there, I'm also cautious about how much we're injecting psychedelics into a not so well system. That being said,
yeah, give it up. I totally agree.
How do you see the future of other psychoactives coming online and being applied through telemedicine, MDMA, psilocybin? What's the dream, guys?
Yeah, I mean, how exciting is this, right? We're 12,000 people in one place talking about the advent of mass adoption of psychedelic therapies. It was only a dream a couple of years ago, and we're maybe one or 2 years away from FDA approval for MDMA. So that's pretty awesome.
Go team.
Yeah, go team. And so, for us at Journey, it's absolutely clear that we're going to be incorporating these treatments in our model. And so we're going to be looking at, what are the REMS, the risk and mitigation strategies that are going to come with these treatments, what is going to be the DEA scheduling, and, we're already building to accommodate that through, infrastructure and training and support. So that's something that we've been working on since day one.
Yeah, so my mother, I think we have to be cautious. Unfortunately, there's this sort of sense, especially here, that we're on the right side of history, which of course we are. The progress is inevitable. And my mother's generation already screwed this up. My mom in 1966 got pregnant with me 3 weeks into her freshman year in college and turned on, tuned in, and dropped out and ran off to Chile and didn't come back for the next 15 years. And she, when she left for Chile, was highly optimistic because the country was going through a moment not unlike the moment that we're living now, where the country was very divided. There was a generation of people, in that case young people, here a generation of conscious people who really believed the world was going to change, and it didn't, in part because of the arrogance and irresponsibility of the people in the very movement. And I think we have to be very, very careful. We're absolutely, just like Jonathan, committed. The ketamine's where we start, and MDMA, psilocybin, and we're going to have more and more tools, and that's wonderful. But what we really need to do is provide evidence of how impactful these tools are. And so what we've done, and when my board, which wasn't happy at all with the notion that we were going to open up our platform and give the world sort of access to this big investment we made, is our point was we need data. So we have the data, as I've mentioned a couple times, on 100,000 experiences, and we need the data on 1 million experiences. Because if you think about it, we have a lot of anecdotal evidence that these medicines, broadly defined, work, and there's still precious little clinical evidence. And in between sort of double-blind studies and anecdotal evidence, you get empirical evidence, which is really real-world outcomes of how patients are actually doing. And so, when companies like Journey Clinical and New Light are operating at scale and gathering copious amounts of data and doing what Big Pharma never does, and doing what, unfortunately, companies in the space aren't doing, which is opening up their data and not trying to ring fence it and charge a toll for society to leverage that data. That's how we actually change the conversation, win hearts and minds of Main Street. And so that's really the journey that we're on.
Real quick, how are regulatory changes going to be impacting telemedicine? Last question.
Very important question that's been on the minds of everybody for the past year. You know, at Journey, we've been building for regulatory change since day one. And so, you know, at the end, just a little bit of context that during COVID, the governments allowed for something called the public health emergency, which allowed exemptions for the prescription of controlled substances without in-person visits. On May 11, the PHE ended, and so the DEA came up with new proposed guidelines for the prescription of controlled substances, which included a 30-day ability to prescribe before having to be seen in person. And so what's been really quite amazing is that the DEA opened this for commentary for a period after they proposed the guidelines, and they received 38,000 comments, largely in favor of more flexible guidelines. And so what I think is really encouraging is that the DEA did something amazing. They extended the PHE waiver, and they're going to come back with what we expect to be more flexible guidelines. So at Journey, we're ready for on May 11th, but we'll be ready to accommodate that and ensure standard of care and continuity to our members and to our patients as well.
Muchas gracias.
De nada.
Onward, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you.